It's time for this week's RSPW Rewind. This week we're going back in time to the year 1998. In full swing of the Attitude Era. It's been a few weeks. I have missed doing this. So I hope you'll take a stroll on back in time with me. We begin with a post by Greg Dillard, who calls himself the Opened Package for some reason. Open package of what? Nuts? Cheese? Condoms? He doesn't say. From September 4th, 1998, just days after SummerSlam Highway to Hell, a post titled The Opened Package Rant about the WWF. First of all, this is my first post here on RSPW, and I'm glad to be here. Oh, that's cute. He hasn't been corrupted yet. Give it time. Lately, it's been unbelievably easy to bash WCW for a lot of its booking, events, and overall performance. It's been like shooting fish in a barrel. Bashing the WWF, though, sure, there are some WCW marks out there, but most critics are decidedly pro-WWF, and with good reason. You definitely can't argue with the recent success, or can you? Whether you choose to believe it or not, there is a flaw in the current direction of the WWF. Vince and his gang have taken the step of eliminating the traditional face-heel alignment of most wrestlers, instead crafting a stable of tweeners that normally get face heat from the crowd. This fact, combined with Steve Austin wearing the gold, present Vince with a complicated scenario in booking future angles and opponents at the top of his federation. Evidence of this is the current Austin-Undertaker feud. This feud took nearly 6 months to craft. Mainly, when it first began, Undertaker was the number 2 face in the company. Vince had to create a web of storylines surrounding the angle to keep the Undertaker babyface, yet get some heel heat. The supporting characters of Mankind and Kane are the ones that really made this happen. Now, if you're questioning my logic, let me ask you, who's next for Steve Austin? Does he battle Kane again? A rematch with The Undertaker? Or could Vince be worried that the product is becoming stale? I'd put money on it that he is. Let's see. You could throw The Rock against Austin, but does anybody seriously believe that Maivia is ready for a main event run? Oh, the open package. Apparently he allowed his brain to be rotted out. Poor guy. How about Triple H? Well, the latter match was a good step, but I think Helmsley is much better as the number 2 guy than the guy. Well, he got that right. I take back what I said about the open package. See, even he understands that Triple H is not the guy. He's the guy that works with the guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. Says, this is exactly my point. Vince is building his organization with a very shaky foundation. Given the current roster, champion, and depth, detailed precision booking is necessary to carry out a simple run for the gold, which really should be the easiest angle to craft in the first place. Too bad Vader has been jobbed to death. He could be the man, really play heel to Austin. Right now, though, he's a joke to most fans after losing to Mark Henry. Regardless, Vince needs to take a close look at where the organization is going in the short run, or risk a WCW-type creative decline. Well, had the Brawl for All gone the way that they wanted it to, they would have had Dr. Death lined up to challenge Austin. Instead, we got The Rock, who, according to the open package, wasn't ready for a main event run. Mike responded, the only reply to this post, I got a satellite a few months ago and reconnected to the WWF and WCW. I missed all of the 90s action, and even some late 80s. That said, I'm having a hard time dealing with either federation. Neither has made me think, even for an instant, of buying a pay-per-view, and I'm about to stop watching altogether. My complaints are as follows. Well, this should be good. While I like watching Steve Austin and believe him to be credible as champion, I cannot give such credit to his 3 main challengers. I'm sorry to you who think of Undertaker and Kane as deserving or able-bodied to be the champion. To me, these guys are clones of one another, and even Hogan, with too few moves and not very fast, was a good salesman when on the receiving end. Foley is much better, but the character changes he's gone through leave me confused. Who is he? And will we ever see a Dude Love Cactus Jack feud? A crazy man is champion? Not for me. Next, we have two brothers messing up each other's matches, and I realize that when we watch wrestling, there is a measure of reality that we forget about, but the guys in the ring see Doofus 1 and his brother Lame. I guess instead of Kane, he called him Lame. Coming down to give the almighty chokeslam. Why don't they run or put up a fight when they see them coming down to the ring? What I know now is that none of the WWF talent is able to stand up to Undertaker and Lame. Just let their butts get kicked, and Undertaker and Lame can't do the job on Austin, so we have a champion more indestructible than Goldberg. Now we are blessed with a triple threat match. Let's see. The brothers, each wanting to be the champion, keep pulling each other off of Austin until they turn on one another, go to the floor dazed, and Stone Cold pins the other one. When has that script been used before? Bring in Rocky or Triple H or even Blackman, Ken Shamrock, or Bart Gunn. They may not be as ready for prime time, but I am weary of the four-way battle going on right now, and say so with my remote control. Tennis, anyone? I'm getting the feeling that WCW, also very lame, is watching WWF for ideas. Maybe the sum total of decent talent available has probably always been under a dozen, but none of the current top guys really make me care, face or heel. And the plots, it's just not working. Where's the remote? Clicking off now. So Mike says no to the Attitude Era and NWO era of WCW. I wonder if Mike would be happier with the PG era or the stuff that we have today. I'm guessing Mike is not watching anyway, so it doesn't matter. On September 15th, 1998, Rip Claw was one of the first people to post about the arrival of a real man's man in the WWF. One Steven Regal. Steven Regal is a man's man, he says. He's going to be chopping down the competition in the WWF like a buzzsaw. Alicia Snow was devastated. She said, "This made me roll over on the floor and cry. This is a stupid gimmick that won't work. Why not just let him be Steve Regal, the annoying British heel? That's what he does best." Ice Arth, or maybe it's Ick Earth? I don't know. He says, "I agree. I liked Lord Steven Regal. What are they doing to him? Trying to replace Hacksaw Jim Duggan with Regal." Professor Rev 777. "Well, in my opinion, I think they'll keep playing these man's man promos, but then he'll still be a whiny heel when he wrestles. Then he'll expose the fact that Regal paid for those spots to make himself look tough. I think it would be funny anyway." Tom Hyatt proclaims, "All I can say is the day he comes out in women's clothing is the day that I quit watching the WWF for good." Well, I hate to break the news to you, Tom Wyatt, but that's exactly what happened, I believe, just a few years later. I mean, didn't Regal dress up as a woman on TV once in like 01 or 02 or something? It was like the mid-2000s. Maybe it was the mid-2000s. Maybe a few years later. I vaguely remember this. I may have blocked it from my memory. Somebody can help me out. And Vinny says, "I hope they make Regal an old-fashioned British macho man. Anyone from the north of England will know what I mean. And he has to be a woman hater." I love that part. Is that like a Northern England thing that I'm not aware of? Do people from Northern England hate women? Or maybe they did in 1998. I need somebody from the north of England to hit me up and let me know if this is a thing or not, because that's terrible. Oh my goodness. The very next day, September 16th, Quentin Chester Elwood Coish. That's a mouthful. With a post titled, "I personally thought that the Steven Regal man's man promo was hilarious." That's not a headline, that's a message. You gotta tighten that thing up when you put a headline together. Less is more, Quentin. Says, "At first I was watching the tube thinking that it is some stupid TSN promo for an outdoor show or a promo for a lumberjacking tournament. Then I heard the WWF announcer voice and I became wide-eyed the whole time thinking that this was the worst gimmick ever. But then I started to find it comical and nearly fell off the couch. The couch, laughing. However, this gimmick has probably the highest propensity to go belly up. Some people aren't going to like it, some people aren't going to love it. I just hope they let Regal have the mic because I remember his hilarious degradation of Americans in the early WCW days, and it was great. So let's see if he has what it takes to get away from that and have good mic skills for something else. Michael Price is having none of it. First, Eric ruins him. Now Vince buries him. Steven Regal is too good for the treatment that he has gotten from both WCW and the WWF. He is one of the top mat wrestlers in the business right now. Owen disagrees. He says, yeah, the way you bury somebody is by cutting an expensive promo for him and placing it prominently into your flagship show. Otherwise known as Golgo 13, that's his name. Otherwise known as Golgo 13, has this to say. He says he needs to join All Japan or New Japan. At least there his tremendous skills can flourish. See, so even 22 years ago, there were people hoping for a WWE talent to leave for New Japan. Jawa took issue with Michael Price's reply. He's quoting him. Says, first Eric ruins him, then Vince buries him. He had a promo on Raw. How is that being buried, you idiot? Says, Steven Regal is too good for the treatment he's gotten from WCW and WWF. Oh, do you mean the big money contract or the push on Monday Night Raw? Yeah, he's too good to be pushed and paid a lot of money. Says he is one of the top wrestlers in the business right now, the top mat wrestlers. And Jawa says that all by itself is not going to get him over. In spite of what you seem to think, moron, wrestling is not high art. It's rough around the edges, working man's theater, and gimmicks will always be part of it. You should stop watching wrestling if this isn't providing you what you're looking for. But then, how would you fill up all the time you use to spend whining on the internet? And I'm sure glad he's got you to fight his battles for him, loser. Michael Price responds. Sounds like he and Jawa have history together. Says, hey look, it's Jawa again. What are the odds that meaningless insults would come from you? You said that he had a promo on Raw. How is that being buried, you idiot? By forcing him into a stupid cartoon gimmick. That's how. Says, oh, do you mean the big money contract or the push on Raw? Yeah, he's too good to be pushed and paid a lot of money. Well, you can make a lot of money selling drugs on the street too. Why don't you go do that if money is all you care about? Says, mat wrestling is not going to get him over. You might actually be... Okay, so then he says, you might actually be on point here when you say that, but your statements were lost when you start insulting me for no reason. Too bad you can't form any real sentences to actually defend your position. And then, of course, he had said, I'm sure glad he's got you to fight your battles for him, you loser. To which Michael Price says, well, there are the insults again. You might want to see a shrink to find out why you can't express yourself properly. Jawa had something to say about that, and even floated his own explanation for the man's man gimmick, which I had never heard before, and I think is very far-fetched. I believe he's reaching so hard he's like Stretch Armstrong on this. But you can chime in and let me know if you agree. Says the gimmick is that he's a real man, a tough guy, the polar opposite of his WCW gimmick. WWF wants to give the impression that WCW booked Regal with a silly stereotypical gimmick, and now in the WWF we will be seeing the real Steven Regal. The lumberjack thing was a dig at Goldberg, whom he exposed and made look silly and fired from WCW because of it. That's his heat right now. He's the guy who cut Goldberg, the tallest tree in the forest, down to size. Explain the cartooniness? I'll give you a hint. Just because you want him to have a cartoony gimmick for the sole purpose of extending your complaining marathon, thereby filling in the void of boredom, does not mean that he actually does have a cartoony gimmick. He doesn't. And if you think he does, please explain why in detail. Yeah, again, I don't buy that explanation for a second. I think he's it's like if you go to a museum or like an art gallery and you're looking at a painting on the wall and it's just a bunch of blotches and a bunch of colors and shapes. Somebody comes over and says to you, "Oh, it means it's about the fountain of youth, and it's about the meaning of life, and it's an existential crisis." Shut up. It's a bunch of shapes and a bunch of colors. It means something different to everybody. That's his explanation for it. I guarantee you that's not why WWF did the gimmick. Andre Mitchell agrees. Andre Mitchell says you can't possibly believe that anybody outside this news group knows about any Regal Goldberg connection. Here, let me help you. Back away from the keyboard, take Vince McMahon's wee-wee out of your mouth, and turn off the computer and go outside. Go outside and ask another wrestling fan who does not read RSPW, and ask them if they know about a Goldberg versus Regal situation. Once you've discovered another world outside RSPW, you will gain the perspective of seeing wrestling for what it is. No, there isn't some underlying theme to Regal's gimmick. He's being repackaged, and who knows whether it's going to work or not. Take Double J as an example. He has changed his image twice since returning to the WWF. All the WWF is doing is trying to get the fans to care about him. That's all. Shadow says, "Does no one have a sense of humor? The whole Regal thing is a joke. It has nothing to do with Goldberg, and if it does, it's only an underlying subtext. The whole promo was purposely generic, over the top, and outdated, and obviously so. It blows my mind that some smarts sit around and gab for hours and hours about how dumb the marks are, and yet they can't decipher something so blatantly simple. I haven't seen one person on RSPW who actually has recognized the obvious sarcasm of Regal's gimmick. How can there be so much confusion? Were you mad when you thought the WWF was pushing the Briscoe Brothers Body Shop as a face stable? Right now, the pure babyface in wrestling is dead. Promoters have yet to tap into the prospect of pushing sickeningly generic traditional faces as actual heels, and the whole Regal thing is the start of it. Remember in late 1996 when Michaels had gotten to the point where only the female fans were cheering him and the guys were just annoyed by his persona, and McMahon tried to push him as a man's man to alter that? I dare say the reuse of that moniker is a direct poke at that failure, and that fans will be booing the hell out of that cheesy face McMahon is trying to push on us within weeks. And finally, way into the future, on March 25th, 2010, we have this gem from the original Bastard. Gimmick idea for a man named Bill Durr. He could be a man's man William Regal 2010. Could also rename himself Bob and appeal to Vince's new G-rated audience. Bill Durr. Or would it be Bill Durr? I'm not sure. But this has been your weekly reminder. Well, I mean, I don't have one this week, but the man's man gimmick was a Vince Russo idea that Regal hated. Regal also has no memory of that period, as he had a huge drug problem at the time. And even though it only lasted about 5 or 6 weeks, he once said that it totally overshadowed everything else that he has ever done in his career.